Hello, everyone, and welcome back to another episode of Bookworm Banter. I'm your host, Ariana, and this is the podcast where we're taking reading to the next level, one page turner at a time. From covers to chatter, we've got the books that matter, and the book that matters this week is People Like Her. Guess who's back? Back again. Ari's back. Okay, stop. So, as you guys all know, it has been a minute since I last did my podcast, and I'm gonna be honest. Let's have a minute of honesty here before we get started in this book review. First off, I'm new to this. I'm not true to this, I'm new to this. So, in the sentiment of that, I'm just gonna say I can't keep up. First off, I love reading. I'm an avid reader, but as discussed in one of my previous podcast, I just recently started school. I'm trying to change careers, so I'm back in school, back at it again with the books, school books, and I just can't keep up. Trying to read a book every week is impossible. I thought I could do it, and then life told me otherwise. You ever have that happen to you? You're like, yes, I can do all things, and then God was like, slow down. No, you can't. I mean, I can do all things, but you can't do all things. So clearly, I can't do all things. I cannot read a book once a week. It's just not going to happen. So to try and keep this podcast going, to try and keep my dream alive, I'm going to try and read one book every 2 weeks. So I'll be posting every 2 weeks now instead of every week, so I can still focus on momming and wifing and full-time employing. Not really full-time, because let's be honest, I'm not full-time, but just doing all the other things that I'm trying to do in my life right now. So moving forward, you're only going to be hearing from me for book reviews every 2 weeks. I would love to hear some feedback if you guys want other content that's more simple. I think I'm thinking about trying some things out, like maybe do like top 10 favorite books, or maybe just do a podcast about new books coming out, authors, maybe talking about some other things. I don't know. All things related to books, because let's be honest, on the same note of this book, I'm not on here talking about my personal life, y'all. It's just not going to happen. Y'all might get some tidbits here and there, like me being in school or what I do for work, but I am not interested whatsoever in being social media famous. But then with that being said, okay, now that we've got that out the way, 2 weeks, guys, every 2 weeks. And even this is going to be late because I post every Monday. Today's Tuesday, and I still got to record and edit it. So apart from this week, book reviews will now be every 2 weeks. On Mondays, usually. Okay, so let's get into it. People Like Her. If you haven't read, I'll go over what this book was supposed to be about, because it has been a minute. It has been a minute since we last spoke. And I don't know if you guys went out and bought the book or if you were just waiting to hear about the book. I'm going to give you a refresher of what the book was about just by reading what the little insert is. Okay. To her adoring fans, Emmy Jackson, aka the Mama Bear, is the honest Instamom who always tells it like it is. To her skeptical husband, a washed-up novelist who knows just how creative Emmy can be with the truth, she is a breadwinning powerhouse, brilliant at monetizing the intimate details of their family life. To one of Emmy's dangerously obsessive followers, she is the woman who has everything but deserves none of it. So I'm not going to read the whole thing because I read it last time. And just from that first 2 paragraphs, you can kind of get or remember what this book is about. People Like Her. It is about the ups and downs of being a social media influencer. And it was very interesting. Now, easy read. I don't know. I've got notes. I've got opinions. I've got comments. Let's get into it. So first off, this book was a pretty short one. It was 275 pages. So that was, for me, great. I will chef's kiss on that, the page numbers. And even though it was only 275 pages, it still took me 2 weeks to read, y'all. So I just Hashtag fail. So the book was only 275 pages. Great. Love it. And a random side note about the book, a couple random side notes and fun facts. So Ellery Lloyd is the author to this book, but the author is actually two people, a husband and wife, and they co-wrote this book and came up with the pseudonym Ellery Lloyd for their joint publishings. And I thought it was very interesting because in the back of the book, I'll show y'all, it has a picture of the husband and wife, and Ellery Lloyd sounds like a woman's name, I guess, in my opinion. I thought this was written by a woman, especially just based on the cover. So this, when I first saw it, I was like, oh, that's nice that the woman want her husband all up in her picture, all up in her publishings. That's cute. A little codependent, but that's cute. And then to find out that they wrote it together. So I thought that was pretty awesome. It's always nice to have a hobby with your significant other. I don't know if they've written other books together, but they wrote that book together. And then another random thought I had about this book. So the book that I purchased came with a book cover, and then you just have like a plain book. So I was just curious as to if it is more expensive to put an actual cover on the book, or is there some rhyme or reason behind having a cover versus just putting it on a book. Random, I know, but anyways, let's get into the book. So Amy Jackson, the main character, the book focuses around Amy Jackson and her family, Amy and the husband Dan. Amy and Dan are the husband and wife of this social media family. They have two kids, Coco and Bear. Coco is a girl. She's the oldest. And then Bear is 8 weeks old. And it just follows them throughout the book about having their lives being posted on social media and the struggles that entails, especially Dan he's supposed to be a serious writer in the book. He's only written one novel and hasn't written anything in the last 8 years. So I mean, that's like if I was a track star in high school, but I haven't ran since high school, would you still call yourself a runner? I don't know. But he refers to himself as a novelist. That's his job in the book. And Emmy is the breadwinner, as she does social media. That's where they get all their money from. So the book follows their family. They have Irene. She's also a main character. She is Amy's publicist, which I did not know that social media influencers have publicists or agents. She's an agent, like a talent agent. Sorry, not a publicist, a talent agent. So social media influencers have talent agents. I don't know if that's a real thing, if that's based off a real thing, but in this book, Amy Jackson has a talent agent and who manages all of her social media stuff. So I thought that was interesting. Okay, let me see this. So yes, so the book follows their family and the ups and downs of blah, 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 woo, woo, woo. Dan, he seems to be opposed to majority of the social media lifestyle because he thinks of himself as like a high-end kind of person, too good for social media. He doesn't like the idea of putting all of your business out in the world for everyone to see. He doesn't like having his children necessarily be on social media, and he is opposed to majority of the stuff that Emmy is doing, but allows her to do it because it's making such good money, and quite frankly, he's not bringing any in. So he doesn't really have a leg to stand on as far as telling her to quit social media, because then how would they make money, right? They've fallen into the social media money trap. You start making good money, you quit your job, then you're making really good money, you start living this lifestyle, right? And there's nothing that you can do in real life that would get you that kind of financial stability that you now have from social media. So it really puts you between a rock and a hard place. So he is the opposer of the whole situation, but like I said, he doesn't have a leg to stand on. So Emmy, she starts out as a fashion editorial writer, and because of the internet making magazines and some books pretty much obsolete, she finds herself without a career, and she's thinking to herself, oh, well, while I was in, the fashion industry, I saw how much we were paying all of these social media influencers for, a 5-minute market, or just to mention our name or mention a brand in a 2-second clip or whatever. And I thought to myself, I could do it. So Amy tries to do this shoot blog for a while and realizes it's not going to get her the accolades that she needs to project herself to top tier social media influencer. And so she gets pregnant, purposely gets pregnant nonetheless. Like, that's just wild. She, in the book, says that she never wants to have kids or never wanted to have kids. But as soon as she realized there was money in being a parent and having kids, then she decides, okay, yeah, I'm going to go ahead and have this kid. So she gets pregnant, goes back to the agent and says, I'm pregnant, and then starts her social media journey as Mama Bear. And her whole thing with Mama Bear is she's supposed to be the tell it like it is mom. Like, oh, today I'm not wearing makeup. Oh, life is so hard. Oh, hot coffee. Finally, I never get to enjoy a hot coffee. Who else is tired from sleeping kids? Like, just, she's one of us is her stitch. And I guess in the book, it really resonates with an audience. She gets like 1 million and something followers, and she's like the ish now. So that's how her career starts out as a social media influencer. So one thing I found interesting about the book, and one thing I find interesting period about social media, is that people find it to be what is referred to in the book as lifelines. She says her likes and comments began to be her lifelines, and a way she found her place through the connection of her people. So people who are going through the same struggles and similar things, that's where she, after giving birth, found connection and found her place within the struggles and things that she was going through. And I think a lot of people can have similar feelings about that, and which is why social media is such a draw. Not only does it connect you to so many people that instantly have similar likes, similar things. They can literally go on the internet and search like fan club of such and such, and there's a whole base of it, and then you found your place if you're a fan of whatever it is that you're searching for. So the internet and social media has really connected so many people with similar interests that it has become, in my opinion, difficult for people with differences to connect, because it's so easy to just find people that you connect with that people have stopped listening to each other. So I do think it's interesting that in this book that she does mention finding her people, and it is through the connection and power of social media. And this is where her journey begins to see that, like, oh, there's so many people like me. This could really be going somewhere. There's a woman in the book who is after Emmy. She feels as though Emmy has done something detrimental to her family. And so she wants to make Emmy suffer in the same ways that her family had suffered. So she kind of stalks her, which I think is really interesting, because Haunting Adeline was the book that I just read last. It is another stalking book. So I was like, oh, let me read something a little more lighthearted, something a little more fun. People like her, just based on the cover, I thought like looked a little more lighthearted, and it definitely is. Don't get me wrong. The book is light years away from what Haunting Adeline was. But it's just interesting that this book ended up being another stalker book. I wasn't expecting it. I thought it was going to turn out to be something a little different. But I guess if you're trying to like plot to kill somebody, you kind of have to stalk them a little bit. So my prediction was that the lady who was stalking Emmy to kill her was her old best friend Polly, because it seemed like in the beginning of the book and still throughout the book that Emmy had kind of lost touch with Polly, and they were supposed to be best friends, and she was saying kind of like, oh, I've put Polly off and I haven't seen her in so many things, and she messaged me and texted me, and we'll catch up sometime. Like, it didn't really seem like she was giving that relationship enough nourishment. She wasn't really focusing or caring for that friendship. And so I thought maybe Polly, having always been like the less attractive friend, had gotten jealous and started to plot to like hurt her because of it. So that prediction was wrong, but that's neither here nor there. And then they say something really funny. The book is honestly pretty funny, guys. Like, there are a couple of things that I'm just like, okay, yeah. Like, it's not like a full-blown, like, laugh out loud. Like, it's not hilarious, but the book definitely gave me a few chuckles. One being, I made note of on page 25, they refer to scrolling through your phone at night, just, flipping through Instagram or whatever. They refer to that as a scroll hole because you get sucked into like this black hole of scrolling. It is just endless, and there's video after video, and before you know it, 2 hours later, it's 1 o'clock in the morning and you have to work at 7. So, the scroll hole was hilarious to me. And then another note that I made, which I already touched on, was that Emmy had said that she never wanted to have kids, but then she got pregnant just so she could be Insta famous, which I think is wild. Like, how desperate can you be to want to be Insta famous or social media influencer famous that you would get pregnant? Because a child is like an 18-year lifetime responsibility. Like, you don't just have a kid like how you could be a fashion influencer. You buy a purse, you wear it for a little bit, you don't like it, you give it away, or you put it in the back closet, you move on with your life. But with being an Insta famous parent, that's responsibility. That's not just, oh, I get to travel and now I'm Insta famous for traveling. Or, oh, I love to eat and now I'm Insta famous for trying restaurants and suggesting new places. And whatever these Insta people are Insta famous for, you're Insta famous for a child, a human being. And it boggles the mind how anybody would want to have a kid just to do that. Because me personally, I mean, y'all, if y'all are parents and y'all are listening to this, I'm on the struggle bus day in, day out. Now, granted, from how she sounded in the book, they getting it, y'all. They getting the money. They in the bag. They getting free bags. They are in there. So for some people, I guess maybe it's worth it. But for me, I don't think that it would be. I think that kids, whole other ball game. I wouldn't be trying to do it just to get famous. Moving on. So on page 100, I'm going to read y'all this insert. Let me go to it because, okay, so there's a scene in the book where the stalker, she interacts with the children. The father, Dan, takes Coco to the mall, and Dan loses Coco in the mall. The stalker takes advantage of this, and she goes up to the child and takes her. Walks her around the mall, shows her a couple stores, gives her a little teddy bear, and she's like, my intention is not to harm Coco at this time. My intention is just to give Dan a scare, to make them feel lost and feel a little bit of pain like I felt. So she's expressing herself through her perspective, and she says this. I'm going to read it verbatim. Holding that child in my arms, feeling the gentle flutter of her pulse against me, her head close enough to my face for me to smell her shampoo, the shampoo I can remember washing Grace's hair with, I found myself asking myself if I could really do it, if I could truly hurt an innocent human being. And the honest truth is, knowing who she is, knowing who her mother is and what she's done to me, I felt myself fully capable in that moment of chucking that child over the side of the escalator, dropping her off a balcony, hurling her headlong into traffic without a second thought, without a moment's remorse. And the truth is, the only reason I didn't do any of those things. The only reason I did leave her standing unharmed where I did was not because I had a moment of stage fright or compassion or even doubt. It was because I have something much worse planned for Emmy Jackson and her family. Y'all, I was reading that like, oh, that took a turn. That definitely took a turn. Just chuck this baby over the escalator. Okay. I was like, oh, she's psycho. She's crazy. She's literally insane. So that was that. And so the stalker is a grandmother to a woman named Grace. Grace had a daughter with a husband named Jackson. The daughter's name was Ailsa. It's spelled Ailsa. I didn't know how to pronounce it. I'll say. So the daughter Grace was having a difficult time with parenting. As much as you love your kids, it's not always sunshine and rainbows. And the daughter Ailsa was having a difficult time sleeping, and therefore the mom was not getting any sleep. Grace was not getting any sleep, and she had been going back and forth and contemplating on whether or not co-sleeping was something that she wanted to do. And most people say, doctors will say that co-sleeping is not something that you really want to do because you could roll over, suffocate the baby could fall off the bed, there could be a number of things that go wrong with co-sleeping. So by most, it's not advised, but a lot of parents still co-sleep. I certainly did. So the mom, Grace, realizing she needs sleep, and the only time that the baby falls asleep is when she's in her arms. She was contemplating on whether or not to go ahead and try co-sleeping so she could get some rest. And the Grace goes to see Emmy at like a speaking event, a conference or something like that. Emmy tells Grace that co-sleeping is totally normal and plenty of moms do it. And, she co-slept forever. Like, you should just try it. Whatever you and your baby needs, like, just do what feels good, do what feels right. Now, Grace co-sleeps with her baby, and she does what she thinks is appropriate, but she doesn't tie her very long hair up. And the baby ends up snuggling so much into her mom that the hair gets wrapped around the baby's neck and dies. Okay, so the stalker holds Emmy accountable for this. The stalker says that Emmy is at fault for giving bad advice to her daughter, and because she gave her that advice that co-sleeping is normal and that she should try it, the stalker now holds Emmy accountable for that, and she wants Emmy to pay for this fake facade of what's going on. And then later they reveal that Emmy, in an interview on TV of sorts, says that she never co-sleeps, and she just she doesn't have enough knowledge or an opinion on what other people should do that works for them, but it was nothing she'd ever done. So the stalker realizes that Emmy's full of shit and that she just panders to whoever she's talking to, says whatever she wants, does whatever she wants, and doesn't care about anyone in the wake of that path, and she wants to make her pay for it. Now, I will say, clearly the grandma is crazy to think that anybody could be liable for your daughter making her own choices, because she didn't have to listen to this non-medical professional. She said that the daughter had done her own research and she was still wavering on it, but she felt like it was Emmy's advice that gave her the last straw to push her into deciding to do the co-sleeping. But we all know when we see these social media people, whatever it is that they're promoting or trying to sound like experts on, they're typically disclaiming like, don't listen to me. I'm only telling you like what works for me. If you want to go out and try it, fine, that's cool. But liability wise, like, I'm not it. I'm not the one. I'm not your girl. So, yeah, for her to just hold Emmy to such a rigorous standard, and then like for murder, she's clearly crazy. She snaps, obviously, through grief and loss. The grandma just loses her shit and wants to kill Emmy and sees her as the reason her granddaughter is dead. So throughout the book, the nanny, or the grandma, I don't know why I keep saying nanny, the grandma keeps following and stalking, and she finds out where Emmy lives through little posts here and there. Apparently, okay, this is another thing about this book, okay, because the internet is full of crazy people. And crazy people, some of them have nothing to do but follow your life. They've got time on their hands. They didn't have time yesterday, but they got time today, okay? So what you post, and I know they say this all the time on social media, like you need to be really careful about what you post. Don't post that you're going out of town, because then that means your house is empty. Don't post your house address. Don't post your children's school, like when you're going back to school and you're posting pictures of your kid, of the school's name. Like, don't post information that you don't want everyone in the world to have, because there are malicious people out there who will use it in ways that you might not think even possible. And them being social media influencers, and Dan being so opposing to putting their children's lives on social media, they have certain rules that they try and follow, like not posting where they're at, not posting addresses, not posting their kids in like bathing suits and things like that, to try and be very careful and not give away where they're living. But through just years of conversation, I think like 18 months, 2 years of talking in magazines, of posting pictures, posting restaurants that they're going to, just doing little things here and there, this stalker has concluded a precise area of where they might be living. She's like, there's a gas station in a 5-mile walk. There is a park within 10 minutes. There are all these landmark things that I can pinpoint a certain area of where they live. And they do like a photo shoot for a newspaper, and they're sitting like in their living room, like say here, but there's a mirror on the wall, and the mirror reflects the street, and across the street there is a restaurant, and she can make out the last like 3 or 4 letters of what the name of the restaurant is. So her being an older woman, she pieces together the name like a Scrabble puzzle and figures out the name of this restaurant. She looks at the areas that are described by Emmy that might fit where those restaurants are. There's like 3. She narrows those 3 down, and then sees if there's the gas station, the park, and all these other landmarks within a certain distance. There is. So she pins some points based on the restaurant, based on all these other things that she knows about the area that Emmy lives, and finds Emmy's address. So now she knows where she lives. Now she stalks them, finds where Coco's school is. She follows them here, follows them there. So the fact that she could find where this person lives just based on like little nitbits here and there. Like, when people have time, they got time. If they want you, they gon', and you giving them information, and you giving it to them like that, they gonna use it. So just if nothing else, this book has, which I already know, but just be very careful. You always have to be very careful about what you put on the internet, because even if you don't think that you put anything bad today or tomorrow, it can add up if people are really watching you like that. And so just be very careful in that sense. I did want to mention this. Something is, and I won't say all social media influencers, because you cannot group people together. But in this specific book, these social media influencers have literally lost touch with reality and what it means to be real people, real human people. Everything is a picture. Everything is a post. Everything is deducted down to little squares and how many likes, how many how much content you can provide for people. You can't sit down at a meal without taking a picture. You can't go to a place. Life literally has to happen behind a camera for you, because you have to have all of this content for these people. And it's no different in this book. And Emmy's best friend Polly, which we find out later she is not the killer, has gone through some miscarriages, and she never told Emmy about it because she felt like she didn't want to bother Emmy. It never seemed like a good time. She was always busy. Emmy wouldn't answer her phone calls. She wouldn't answer texts. She'd show up to her children's party and give her a little hug and kiss, and then move on to like the VIP, more important people who she could get pictures of for her social media. So finally Polly just sends her like this heartfelt email about the traumas that she's been going through, the difficult times that she's been having, and explaining why it's taken her this long to admit to Emmy what she's been going through, which is these miscarriages. And she ends the email like, I could really use my best friend. Like, I've been going through it, and I need you. I miss you. And Emmy doesn't even respond to this email, this very heartfelt email to the best friend that she's known since she was a child, maid of honor at her wedding. Does not even respond to her. She like saves the email with intent to go back to it, but never does. So then Emmy's trying to get a job at like a TV show host or something, and they want her to share a heartfelt story and a trauma experience that she's gone through. And this woman literally goes and takes Polly's story and uses it as her own. When you're that desperate, when you're that misplaced, that you would use and abuse someone's trauma, 1, 2, your best friend, and 3, think that it's okay. Like, she didn't think that she even did anything wrong. In her mind, she just was trying to get another spot on top, and that's the thing with social media. You know, you get all these followers, you do all these things, you get on this top level. It's hard when you're on the top because you got to stay at the top. And it takes more work to stay at the top than to fall back down to the bottom. So she's grasping at straws, and this is one of the straws that she grasped at, this sad, tragic story of her best friend Polly that she didn't even take the time to respond to. So I just felt like Emmy she's not in touch with reality. And I really didn't understand why Dan wouldn't just leave her. Like I don't know. Y'all let that be me. Couldn't be me. Wouldn't be me. We would fight. But the way Polly fights is she tells a journalist that Emmy stole her story word for word, shows her the email, blah, blah, blah. It blows up in Emmy's face, as it rightfully should. And she goes to like this social media or like Wi-Fi free retreat where she's going to detox and think about what she's done, blah, 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 bitter banter, whatever. So the stalker finds a way to infiltrate her journey to the retreat and kidnaps her. And her whole plan is not to kill Emmy, but she wants Emmy to suffer loss, like her family has suffered loss. So she wants her baby to die. And y'all, when I say I'm reading this book and I thought the baby died, the 8-week-old bear, I was about to throw this book out the window. I said, not another one. Because as y'all know from the last book, Haunting Adeline, I am very sensitive when it comes to the kids. I do not want to hear, read, do anything about harming a child. And I was getting ready to flip through the pages to get to the end because I'm like, okay, if this is what's happening, like I can't deal. I need to know what happens. Because the struggle that I was going through reading those pages. I just couldn't. So, yeah, it ends up that Bear is alive and well. He lives throughout all the traumatic things, which is great because I was about to rip it, y'all. I was about to just tear it up. But then I kept reading and Bear survives. So, yeah. So then at the end, the grandma, she pretends to die. She drives her car to a cliff and pretends to jump off a cliff, which, y'all, I don't know, I'm sure in every culture, but in black movies and black culture, if you don't see that they dead, they not dead. I need a body. We making headshots. Okay? We're checking pulses. Okay, we're seeing people in the morgue. I want to see y'all zip a body bag up, okay? And we do one extra just to make sure, okay? It's like zombie. Cut the head off. You know what I'm saying? If you don't see all of that, how do you can't just assume that somebody's dead, that they just took their own lives because their car is parked at a cliff. So, as soon as I read that, I'm like, she not dead. She not dead. I don't know if this is going to be a sequel, but clearly she not dead because where the body at? Where the headshots at? Make it make sense. So, moving on, Dan now becomes the social media warrior who was initially opposed to social media. He uses this traumatic event in their lives to write a book. Finally, I guess after 8 years, he got something to write about. So he uses this traumatic event to write a book, becomes this huge novelist person. Now he takes over the social media account because they feel their talent agent feels that Emmy continuing as Mama Bear would get the wrong idea since she just went through a trauma, that she'd be trying to use that as a way to pilot her further into her Insta career. They felt that'd be wrong, so Dan takes over as Papa Bear. And now he's the social media king. He's the one bringing in all the money. And he is up on stage crying, selling it. He's getting hugs and kisses. Just, dads, they can do it all. And, oh, God, look at that dad, So he's getting all the accolades now and he's loving it. And they say that he's a natural, that he's better than Emmy. And it's just crazy, the contrast of him at the beginning of the book and then how he ends up at the end of the book being this social media warrior. And then obviously you find out that the grandma's not dead. So that is People Like Her. Overall, it was a good book. I think the book didn't tell me, it told me some things that I didn't know about social media influencers. One, I didn't know that they have talent agents. That's pretty interesting. Like you could decide you want to be a social media influencer and go get a talent agent and they'll tell you like, okay, this is what's popular right now. This is what's popping right now. So do this, do that, and we'll, start making you Insta famous. That's really interesting. If that is something that actually takes place. I'm not in the social media world. I am not interested in being in the social media world. Apart from this, I don't want to be a person who lives my life on the internet. I never have, never will be. And I'm just not social media savvy. Like, I'm computer savvy, but I just feel like there are so many social medias now to keep up with. You got Snapchat, Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, Facebook, Twitch, so many. I can't even keep up. I'm sure there's more that I'm not even naming, but there's just so many that I just don't feel like keeping up with. So, I've never been interested in that lifestyle, but I'm curious to know if doing that is something that, like getting a talent agent to be Insta famous is something that actually happens. One, what I find most interesting about this book and what I can really appreciate about this book is the rawness of the downside of being Insta famous, one, you get stuck in that hole of Insta money. You know, you feel like you can't go back to working for the man. You have to keep up this lifestyle that you've now created for yourself. You have to keep earning the same money. So you have to constantly be getting new brands, new content, new promotions, new all of these things. And if you slip up, if you fall off that ladder at any moment, like, you can downslide and maybe never come back from that. So I think them talking about how volatile that industry can be and how quickly things can change and how hard it is to keep giving so much of yourself to something and trying to constantly find some way to rebrand yourself, something new to give the people, something. You're constantly in the works, and it's like, who are you at some point? Are you the person that you're portraying, or you're the person that you are as yourself? And she even says, Emmy, in the book, that she sometimes finds it hard to turn that switch off to go back to being Emmy Jackson from being Mama Bear. And I think that's really real for a lot of people, because everyone knows who you are on the internet is not who you are in person most of the time, especially when you get to that level of social media influencers. You're a brand, you're a sponsorship, you're an avatar of who you portray to people, but that might not necessarily be who you are in real life. And I think that's admirable for them to talk about, but also that you just become sometimes so out of touch with reality for other people. But for me, I don't see how Dan could recognize who Emmy was throughout the book. And he says that himself, like, sometimes he can't imagine living without her, but sometimes he looks at her and he wonders, like, who is this person? This is not who I married. Yeah, this is not who I married. This is not who I thought was going to be the woman I spend the rest of my life with. And I think that's fair. Like, if my husband all of a sudden wanted to be social media famous to the point where he's taking pictures of food and we can't leave the house without him taking a picture and posting it, I couldn't get behind that. I don't care how much money it's bringing in. I'm not that person who constantly wants to live in pictures. Like, when I go out, my phone is one of the last things that I care about. So if I was with a person who was like that, or a person who turned into that, I don't think I can handle that. And so for me, I don't see how Dan could handle that either. But my favorite person in this book was probably Irene. She's the talent agent. She's just very realistic and just very cutthroat. And as a woman in that industry, I feel like that's really great. Emmy's probably my most annoying one. She is the main character, and I think she's meant to be annoying because there's nothing heartfelt about Emmy throughout the whole book. There's no, in my opinion, for me, there's no connection. There's no feeling towards Emmy that I feel like, yeah, I really want her to win. Like, I want her to do better, and I think that she can. There's no character arc for her. She is a one-tone person throughout this book, and it is social media. And if anybody knows any social media influencers, I think that I want to group you all together. But yeah, she's just very one-tone. It's all about social media. Can't get enough of social media. How many likes can I get? Yeah, she was just annoying, and I'm not with it. So yeah, all in all, I would say that the book was pretty good. It had some good insights about social media and the world that we're living in and what it takes to be an Instagram influencer, or to be Insta famous, as they call it. And I would say, would I recommend this book? I would say it was a good book. But would I read it again? Probably not. Now, there are far and few in between books that I would read again. So don't let that be the precipice that defines whether or not you want to read this book if you haven't already read it. But yeah, I'm indifferent. I'm indifferent on the book. It was good writing. It had some twists and turns. At the end of the book, I was on the edge of my seat because I thought they was going to kill Bear. So I will say that, yeah, it was good for what it was, but I'm excited to read another book. I think one of these books up here might do the trick. I've moved my books, y'all. I've moved my books up here. So I think I'm going to go different. Well, hopefully different, because I thought I was going to be going different with this book, but it turned out to be like another stalker. So I think I'm going to go different this next read. This book is called Rootless. I'll see how many pages it is before I commit to it. Well, I got 2 weeks anyway, so. Okay, so this book is 345 pages, the sweet spot. 300 or 400 pages, my fave. I am a fan of Black literature, so I thought this might be a good book. Maybe something like Black Cake, which I had read here recently. Not really recently, but I had read it before the summer. Ha! That's funny. Okay, so I'm going to now read the description. One spring afternoon in London, Sam races up the stairs to his flat 2 at a time. There's 1,300 pounds missing from the bank account he shares with his wife Effie, and his calls are going straight to voicemail. When he finally reaches someone, he learns that Effie is over 4,000 miles away as their child looks around and asks, "Where's Mommy?" When Effie and Sam meet as teens headed for university, it seemed that everyone knew they were meant to be. Effie newly arrived in the UK from Ghana and, sinking under the weight of her parents' expectations, found comfort in the focused and idealistic Sam. He was stable, working toward a law career, and had an unwavering vision for their future, a vision that Effie, a decade later, finds slightly insufferable. From the outside, they're the picture-perfect couple everyone imagined, but there are cracks in the frame. When Effie and Sam are faced with an unplanned pregnancy, they find themselves on opposing sides. Fatherhood is everything Sam has dreamed of, but Effie feels stuck in a nightmare. And when yet another revelation emerges, they are forced to confront just how radically different they want their lives to be. Already swallowed by the demands of motherhood and feeling her dreams slipping away once again, Effie disappears. Rootless is a heart-trending love story about motherhood and sacrifice, providing an intimate look at what happens after a marriage collapses, leading two people to rediscover what they ultimately want, and if it's still each other. As Effie says, love and regret aren't mutually exclusive. So, reading the description of this book, I'm actually really excited about this book. It seems like something I might be able to really relate to. So we'll be back in 2 weeks to review Rootless. Rootless is by Crystal Zara Appiah. Crystal Zara Appiah. And Rootless. So yeah, guys, that's it. Another episode in the books. Ready to go, ready to do what it do, make it pop, pop, pop. No, I'm just playing. Okay, guys, thank you for listening. Come back in 2 weeks so we can review Rootless together, and we'll have more bookworm banter for you then. See you next time. Bye.